I'm missing a really good Manhattan.
Look, that works. Go off video and even make it.
Rye or bourbon?
Rye.
Who are we
Redemption
missing?
Rye.
We are missing someone, aren't we?
Yeah, who are we
Somebody.
missing?
Tom. No,
Dean's-
he's here.
Dean.
Dean.
Dean is
Dean.
going to be absent. Yep, Dean is going to be absent this evening. Yep.
That means Dale gets to be the,
Heavy hitter.
yeah.
I'm the heavy hitter, okay.
We'll activate Dale.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's a working
Lined up.
meeting.
Deb, I prefer rye in my Sazeracs. Bourbon in my
Oh.
Manhattans.
Don't make it all too hard.
All right. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Are we sticking with it?
We are sticking with it.
Do we have anybody here for the privilege of the floor, which I don't think we have during working meetings anyway, do we?
Only if they had pre-registered as per your request.
And no one has?
Nope, not that I'm aware of, and I'm sure Heather would have let me know.
Then we're ready to move right into the sketch plan presentation.
Yes, and thank you for accommodating. Applicant had wanted to appear at the April 26th agenda, but it was quite
It's a little
busy.
full. Besides that, he was there, wasn't he?
I'm not sure, but in any event, he's here and can present on the two projects if you'd like. Happy to admit him.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Good evening. Is George here too?
I'm sorry, this is Andy Schraba.
Yeah. Is George here too, Andy?
George's on vacation, sorry.
Oh, good for him.
He deserves it. He deserves it.
So you want to tell us what you've got planned here?
Yes, the first one basically is we want to put an addition onto the Lansing market, about a 1,500 square foot space, which would be for a liquor store. I prefer not to mention the name of the store, but basically we've been in discussion with them for about a year and a half now about doing something like this. It'd be good for them and be good for the Lansing market also because of some synergy, and people will be able to come in and shop at both spaces in the same location without driving to another location. It's pretty straightforward. It'll be just a rectangular box, about 1,500 square feet. It'll be similar construction to the existing store, similar to EFS wall systems we have there now. The entry will be basically from the overhang that we currently have along the west side of the building. So you can see on the elevations, there's no windows on the side facing west or north. It'll be the door entry on the east side, along with a window into the space. And pretty straightforward. About probably no more than 2 employees at any time in the building. We'll be losing about 4 parking spaces, but we have plenty of parking otherwise in the location, so we don't find it's an issue. So
Just a second.
So Andy, is that between the storm pond and the store? Is that where it's going in?
yeah, do you have the site plan?
No.
Yeah, it's attached to the building, so basically it's between the store, next part of the parking lot is being used.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the pond's not being affected at all.
Okay.
Does it change the spaces? No, they'd be impermeable where the parking spot is anyway.
Yes.
Well, we probably lose about 3 or 4 parking spaces. And basically, of the addition, about 40% of the addition is already impervious surface. It'll be a flat roof, so we'll be collecting water on the roof and then dispersing the water, which would be better than having it go in the parking lot.
CJ, can you show us the?
Yeah, the site plan?
Yeah,
Yep.
I couldn't print it. You could see it.
Yeah, no worries. This is just what's on the submittals page there. So here's the addition there, proposed addition.
So Andy, there's no access between the liquor store and the market?
No, no.
Okay.
Particularly since it's matching the existing building, I can't see anything that I could complain about.
Does the existing building have enough heating and cooling to support that, or will that be a separate unit?
It'll be a separate system, then separate system. More than likely heat pump system, air source heat pump system.
Cool.
Mhm. Yeah, liquor won't freeze if it's not warm enough.
So you want to know.
But it will boil if it's too warm.
Oh,
And that's the east elevation there, looking at the entry to the grocery store in the middle there, and then to the immediate left is the doorway into the liquor store, and then just a window.
How about signage, Andy?
More than likely, they'll have a sign mounted on the building under sign law requirements. No Statue of Liberty will be on the building.
Okay.
ah,
Got it.
ah.
Subtle, Andy, subtle.
I didn't say that.
Now, there's a dance school across the road. I don't think that applies a liquor school to schools to liquor store. Any distance issues there? And it's not a real educational institution.
We have beer in the grocery store, Lynn.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, yeah. I've seen it. Only from a distance.
Oh,
I can't see any problem with this.
I can't either.
no.
So will we see more information on this soon, Andy?
For the next meeting, I've given all the information to CJ, so basically whatever else you might need, I'd be happy to provide. The septic system that we currently have was oversized, so basically any additional septic from this building into that is going to be no problem. I got a letter from TJ Miller Engineering on that. Other than that, I'm not sure what other issues there are. Basically, we're using the water from the existing Deltaia for our existing building. Basically, we might try to get a separate tax parcel, not a tax appropriation for this particular building in order for the tenant to pay the taxes, but we don't know if that's possible at this point in time.
The
Do you
subdivide.
hope to do the construction, Andy?
I'm sorry.
When do you hope to do the construction?
As soon as possible.
Never mind. You could do a ground lease too. Yeah, ground lease could create a new tax parcel also. Doesn't necessarily have to be a subdivision.
So the only sources of natural light would be on the south side?
On the south, yes.
Ah,
Yeah, they want no windows because it takes away shelving units for the liquor and wine.
yeah,
Reduces security too.
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
I mean, Deb is right after that stuff.
Yeah, the grocery store has very little windows also, yeah.
True.
So CJ, what's our next step on this project?
It's like a giant cooler. And will the materials be different? Is it going to be the same kind of EPIS material
Yes.
in coloration and everything? And are you going to try to make it look pretty seamless there?
We're pretty seamless, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd probably reach out to George just to get a color elevation, but if there's anything else the board wants to see, it's a fairly minor addition to an existing building. I am still waiting to hear back whether it would trigger an amendment to the SWIP. I don't have information on the stormwater yet, but I would certainly let you know if there was any erosion or sediment controls or anything that needed to be changed relative to that.
Do we need county 239?
Yes, yep, it needs to go to them for review as well. And hopefully they can turn that around.
Right.
Could we look at the plan one more time, CJ?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you should have gotten in the agenda packet, but you'll be getting the print ones here very soon with the mailing here.
So that looks to be about 300 square feet of the addition that's not on an already paved area. So that's a very small footprint that we're decreasing the permeable surface by. I would be very surprised if there's any change required for the stormwater.
He said it was overdone when it was
You think
originally.
that we'll know about that by the next meeting?
Oh, yeah, we did discuss that in project review, so I should have an answer pretty soon on that.
Cool.
Very
Thanks,
good.
TJ.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't
absolutely.
think any of us see any problems as long as engineering doesn't come up with something, Andy.
Okay, whatever, CJ, let's we know what you need. I can take care of it.
Sure thing. And then you'd like to also introduce the follow-up project as well? Unless the board has further questions on that one.
The rink edition, you mean?
Yes, yeah. I assume that you've got a copy of this also. Basically, right now, the Lansing Food Pantry basically uses space inside the field building at the Community Rec Center. They have about 1,200 square feet, which we've donated to them since they started. There's no cost to them. And because their overall operations have changed, when they first started out, the patrons used to come into the building, walk through the line, go to the various tables and pick food, and basically go out again. So basically they use the existing 1,200 square feet of the building, as well as the part of the field area itself, to be able to accommodate all that, those folks. Their overall program has changed now. So basically what happens is folks basically let them know in advance what the kind of food that they need, and the volunteers package that, and the folks then drive up and it gets put into their car. So they don't enter the building at all. The only people inside the building will be the volunteers. So right now they're out of space because of the way they operate currently, and they've been serving more and more families. And they basically came into some money, and they asked us if we could put some sort of an addition onto the building, and we took a look at it. And George decided to put it on this side of the building to avoid any snow issues off the field roof. It's a huge roof, and the snow coming off that roof is a major issue. So
That's the same footprint where the climbing wall was going, isn't it?
Yes, in some respects, yeah. Climbing wall is a lot bigger than this, of course, but basically it's about the same area, exactly.
Hmm.
And
Oh, I got the
what's
road.
happened with the climbing wall?
We turned them down. And somebody's opened up a climbing wall in Dryden somewhere. It's only about 20 or 25 feet high, but there is a climbing wall going in there, commercial venture, yeah. We didn't feel that the operator of the climbing wall is proposed had any good business acumen, and basically it was a special purpose building, and if it failed, we'd be stuck with a ugly special purpose building. So didn't work.
Andy, will this new addition have a separate entrance and
Yes.
bathrooms?
Again, CJ, could you show, no bathrooms, there's no plumbing in the space. CJ, could you show the floor plan?
Sure thing. Hold on just a moment. It's not here. There you go. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, I guess it's fine, yeah. So basically, the addition building is the lower right corner down the bottom there, and basically up and above that where the door going into is the existing space that they're currently using inside the field building. And then you'll see there's a door exiting basically to the east, going out into the open area, and then there's the overhead door down in the southwest corner, the southwest corner, I guess it might be. That'd be opened up, and so they bring the food out to the cars there. So the cars do not drive in; they just pull up, and we load the cars from the overhead door. It's about 1,300 square feet. It's not 1,500, but 1,300 square feet.
Are you worried about security of people coming into that side door? It's kind of like hidden now.
Well, we haven't had any problems with that. Basically, we don't think so, because the other doors are on that side also, and we had no issues.
This building, the addition is kind of hiding the other entrance doors from the the front of the road and the parking lot. And I just
Well,
want,
there's gonna be a cover over that whole area. So basically, if the next elevation that CJ shows you, that one there. So basically, the one down in the left corner, over those two existing doors, there, the original door for the food pantry is the one on the right, and then the one on the left in the middle there is basically the one for the gym that's upstairs. Right now, there's kind of dormers over each of those buildings. Those dormers will be taken out, and then be a metal roof extension over all those doors and over the overhead door.
okay, I get it now.
Yeah, so it'll be covered with an overhead door, overhead canopy area.
Okay.
So there's so much need for the food pantry that's going to continue.
Absolutely.
Oh, God, that's awful.
That's,
Good we can do it.
yeah, absolutely. We'll be using the same block type of exterior that matches up with the existing block. And then metal roof.
Will there be separate signage for the food pantry?
They can if they want to, sure. They usually use the roadside. Larry, they're only open up twice a month, for 3 hours on the first, I think, second Monday of each month, and then the fourth Monday of each month for about 3 hours or 4 hours. So they usually put a little roadside out for those open times. But if they want to, we have no objection to put the sign on the building. It's up to them.
God bless them.
Yeah.
And again, we will not be charging them anything for this space. They're raising funds to do this. And we'll all pitch in. The rec will pitch in. The private donations have been raised some reason already. So
Okay, are there any other questions? This looks fairly straightforward too. Doesn't look like we're using any area that's now permeable. Thank you very much, Andy.
thank you. Appreciate it. We'll see you in another couple weeks.
Yep. Tell George that we're glad that he's got time for a vacation.
Ask him how we can tell the difference.
I'm sorry, Larry. I couldn't hear you.
I said, ask him how we're supposed to tell the difference
Oh,
between vacation and not.
put it this way, when he gets back, he'll be swamped when he gets back. That's for sure. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye now.
So now we'll move into discussion of the Cuba Lake Scenic Byway Overlay District.
Excellent.
Do you
I
have
would
any
like
information?
Yeah, and attached to the agenda that went out recently, hopefully you received the maps that were attached as well.
That was from 1991 or 71. When was that from? 91?
The ones that Karen did?
Those were just done.
Pardon?
The byway maps that CJ distributed were just done by Karen Edelstein.
They have a retro vibe to them.
Maps up on the top that had the view sheds on them.
Yeah.
Those are the
But the report, the original report
Ah,
was is fairly old, isn't it?
The scenic byway plan itself?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's from what, late 90s, early 2000s, right? I think someone probably has a better idea of that. So
July 2001.
well,
2001, not 91.
Yeah.
there you go.
Years old. I wonder if it's time to try to renew that, or if we just need to update the view shed areas like she's already done.
I think Karen's work looks pretty good. One of the things that kind of struck me was the fact that the people on the other side of the lake had paid a great deal of attention to economic development and economical advantages for the municipalities that the byway goes through, where the people on this side of the lake, or at least on the this side of the southern part of the lake, not so much. not so much of a recognition that there should be things to actually draw people, businesses to actually draw people. I know about the thought about the museum and the visitor centers, but we should be looking at some sort of commercial draw as well, I think.
I was surprised that, I guess I haven't stood down there where the old pit stop was, but it looked like she had a fairly substantial view of the lake from there. And it doesn't seem to me that you can really see the lake from ground level at that point.
I've got a question on that shaded area. Does that mean that's all of that is a view of the lake, or it's a view of the valley? What do you mean by view shed on the shaded area?
I guess I jumped to the conclusion it was view of the lake.
That's a really great question. And so you should have received 4 different view shed
Right.
views essentially. So each one is essentially a point at which the view shed is calculated. So at that very point, so some of them are named like one of them is named number 35, one is named number 36. So there are these points essentially by which, you know, at 5 feet, 5 to 6 feet, this is what you can see essentially. So some of them, like you can see point 36, has very expansive views, for instance, of the lake. Whereas point 35, which I think is the corner, yeah, that's the corner we're talking about at East Shore and Ridge, you can really only see, it looks like probably about, I don't know, 150, around 1,000 feet into the parcel. And then from there, the topography probably takes over. So, and if I could give just a little bit of background, so the Conservation Advisory Council has been completing a natural resources inventory, and with that, a scenic resource inventory. So going to different sites in the town and essentially establishing the scenic qualities of that area, and then providing essentially a view shed. Karen created view sheds for each one of the areas so that you can essentially see from that point, okay, well, what's visible from here? And that kind of brings up one of the first questions that we're talking about related to the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway is I'm hoping the planning board has to some extent reflected on the geographic extent of this overlay. I'm kind of envisioning it as being town line to town line, right? So, you know, southern point at the village, northern point at Cayuga County. On, of course, the scenic byway. I hope that goes without saying, north to south. I think some of the larger questions come into the east to west viewpoints, as well as the extent to which the depth would apply to that. So the reason why we're asking about that is because, as you can see, these scenic the view shed that's actually depicted in the map, for instance, here. Let's look at just one, right? So this is right at Brickyard on Ridge, right at Brickyard on Ridge between Brickyard and Ludloville. So this is the view looking south towards the lake. Here you can see this cone, and you can see essentially what is visible. Now the tricky thing about this, right, is how to uniformly apply a zoning layer that has this kind of differentiation in it, right? So the question, I think, ultimately for the planning board is, you know, do we rely on, you know, for instance, taking this scenic point, maybe, or a handful of scenic points, or other points, actually, maybe a whole bunch of points on the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway. And then how do we actually visualize that cone as to where the overlay district will apply? And that's why I also ask, is just kind of an aside, I did ask Karen to also include this buffer of distance from the center line of the road, because as you all know, zoning has an obligation to be uniform, right? So the question that I'm kind of posing to the planning board is is there some combination of ways that we want to apply the zoning, as in a very uniform buffer along the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway, and or do we want to include perhaps these areas combined into essentially like a cone of vision as to where the zoning would also apply there? Does this make sense? I'm not sure.
Are you
that I'm-
asking whether people want to develop? They've got to develop underground in caves? Are you still talking about a 35-foot height? Are you, I mean, this has got some bites on people. This is a taking if it comes to that.
Back to your map. I guess I'm confused. The map you just showed us.
Yes,
If you
can
go
see
where
that now?
where the pink is or purple, Lansing or Ludlowville Road, most of that is where the school is now. I don't believe you can see the lake along that road. So what is that? Why is that shaded purple like that?
I agree with him.
Oh, it's everything that you can see from that point, essentially. So see this purple, so the view shed here is
Yeah.
depicting everything that you can see from that point. So that would include all of this area that you can see from
Oh,
here.
from the
And
point on
Oh.
Route 36, or
Does
at
this make
number
sense?
36.
Yes, now it does.
Okay, and
Oh,
see
it's-
how it's kind of looks like a cone, like a cone of vision almost, down here in the bottom left with this location map that she's created to kind of hone in on that. This is everything you essentially can see from that point, which includes this area. Now, that's the thing. We can amend these maps so that they essentially have a narrow cone of vision, right? So they could be narrowly defined for just certain viewpoints, or they could be defined as any point throughout the entire byway, right? So that's why I'm kind of asking you to think about the geographic extent to which you want this to apply, right? Is it 1,000 feet in each direction off of the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway to be able to grab the foreground as well as lands out in the distance? Now, I've heard
I
from
make
Lynn
a-
that perhaps that would encourage people to build in caves, so maybe that's not the right approach. And then this is kind of another approach. This is kind of a kind of like a ground truthing approach where you're standing in a specific spot that you know is scenic, right? We have already established that these are scenic spots. And from there, what can you see, right? And what are the most scenic things that you can see from there? And then how do you kind of limit what will be developed within those scopes? I don't know
But
if I'm
I'm sorry, that map still doesn't make sense to me. You go back to that map again, and you go where 36 is, and you look towards the lake, you've got, no, that's not the one. The other one?
Nope, hold on. There's another one. There's so many.
35.
Yeah, if you go where 36 and you're looking towards the lake, going down toward, southerly, you've got all those random purple or pink. That's downhill. Portland Point
Yep.
goes downhill. You're up at 36. I don't see why they're random dots like that. That doesn't, that's illogical.
From the point at 36, you certainly can't see any of Portland Point Road.
No.
Right.
And I'm not 100%. I think you can see a piece of the lake from there.
You can see quite a bit of the lake from there.
Yeah.
Through
See
the
this?
field, across the field.
Across the field, you see Teganic, but it's hard to see south of that. I go by it every
I'm
day.
not sure what it's saying. What's the other pink that's down by the schools? I mean, there's a lot of white between the pink by the school and the point at number 36, but
Yeah. You get up on that hill, you see more and more of the lake. You get up
if
on
you're right at Brickyard Road,
on Brickyard, yes.
if you're right at Brickyard Road and Route 34B by the Methodist Church,
Yeah,
you can see all the way down to the schools.
Then you go up Buck Road, but then you look north on Lansingville Road and you see beautiful rolling hills with farms on it. Why isn't that scenic?
I agree on that one.
Oh yes, those are additional points. So we
Yeah,
are.
So I
Just
mean,
focusing on the
now all of
bylaw.
a sudden, we're putting, we're trying to, well, we're not trying yet, but we're trying to put restrictions on what we build, where we build it. And we still have a state route there that has commerce on it all the time. All the time.
But
Trucks on it all the time. Doesn't
This
matter
is
which
true.
part of it. And we're trying to
we
restrict
understand.
that for what? What we're trying to restrict the development for. Where else are we gonna put any more development?
We're just talking about some possibilities for the area that which the bylaw could apply.
This is a bigger conversation, CJ, because it's been brought up before.
Yeah,
And
no worries.
But we're
it's
still-
the same thing.
Doug,
Doug,
I'll answer Doug's question, which
wait a
is,
second.
No,
Hold
you
it.
won't. I don't want.
We are still trying to figure out what the hell the map's telling us. Before we get on to the rest of this,
Yeah,
let's figure out what the map is telling us so that we can all be on the same page. Because I'm with Al, I'm not 100% sure what that map's trying to tell me.
I think
Jerry?
some of the confusion is the terrain, and where there's areas that are hills, you'll see the tops of the hills, but you won't see the valleys around them. And so what you're seeing in the map is some of the points where the ground pops up enough that you can see that top of the hill.
But I'm saying that's not true. If I'm standing at Brickyard Road and Route 34B, I can see all the way down to the school. I can see every bit of the land in between because it's an open field.
Right.
I can see a large part of the field across the road, all the way down to the woods, and then above the woods you can see the creek. I mean the lake. But you can never, from point 36, see any portion of Portland Point Road. And this is saying that you are going to see some of Portland Point Road. So
Just
I figure that I'm mistaken somewhat in my interpretation of this map.
That's just giving you a visible of the lake from that point. So
but
if you
why
go
was
down
it a little
Portland Point
purple
Road, you
dot?
look from there, you can see the lake. You can see the lake from all the other points north and east of there towards the 38 and see the
Yeah.
lake.
Well,
See,
then
there
it
we
should
go.
You
all
can
be in
see the
pink.
lake from from most of Portland Point Road, certainly all that
I
down
agree.
right there.
So it
I
should all
agree.
be pink if you can see it.
Guys, from what I understood, from point 36, everything that's colored in pink, you can see from point 36. And I agree with Jerry. You can't see that upper part of Portland Point Road from point 36. Now, I cheated. And I drove all the way down from the county line on the old state road, all the way down 34B today. Then did the bypass, and you can, in fact, from Brickyard Road above the where the Methodist church is, you can see the lake, and you can see. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can, because you can see the lake when you're sitting in the church.
Yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree, but you can
Yeah.
also see a lot of area that on this map is not colored pink down through towards the school at least.
I agree with you, and I can't figure out why that's left out, other than, well, I just can't figure out why that's left out. The other part that is colored pink, they're trying to say that you can see that much of the Salmon Creek Valley from there, and maybe you can. It's very difficult when the trees have leaves on them.
Right, if I may just,
The biggest point that I have is the last place you can really see the lake is from the intersection of Lansingville Road, Route 34B, and Lakeview Drive. From that point on, you're looking at, you have a nice vista, but the vista is of the hills of Seneca County on the other side of the lake.
And not the actual lake.
And not the actual lake.
And I'm not sure how much of the actual lake you can see from the old high school, which I think is now a middle school.
Well, you can't really, but you can from the point where they've got marked as point 36. And
Oh, okay.
what
Well,
they
you can
show,
from 36.
yeah, what they show there of the curve of the lake that is shown from point 36 is reasonably accurate. So if we're talking about a scenic byway, with the judgment for the scenic byway being views of the lake, basically, we've got a section from,
Want to go out? You want to come?
from the city of Ithaca north.
You want to watch news?
And then we've got this spot on 36. 35, I agree with you, Jerry. I can't think of any place you can see the lake from 35 unless you're standing on the 3rd floor of Rogues Harbor.
Right. If you're 5 feet off the ground there, I don't think you can see the lake at all.
Yeah.
So
I think we could build a four-story tower and a pagoda like Reading.
Yeah.
that makes me wonder if I'm understanding what this map is trying to tell me.
Well, I think I'm understanding what the map is trying to say, but what it's telling me is there aren't a whole lot of places that the lake is visible from. And one of those places that there isn't really a great view of the lake is from the intersection of 34 and 34B right in the South Lansing.
So
It's got other things to recommend it, but it's not a view of the lake.
CJ,
The scenic
Yes.
highway.
do you
is-
understand it better than we do?
Well, I think maybe to back up a little bit, the view sheds that are shown are, I believe, the longer. Let me look at how Karen marked these up because she gave a very nice background of how she did the maps. For longer views, I believe that she did. So the computer software that we use goes down to 2 meters basically. So it's like a digital elevation model, and it will figure out essentially contours and it gets a really good view of the essentially of the of what's on the ground, right? The
But
topography,
not the trees,
elevation,
right? That's
Well,
without trees.
the thing that Karen did, which I thought was really clever, of course, I mean, she's a GIS expert, so where there was a long view across the lake. So for the ones where you saw all that purple, like for instance, the Brickyard one, she did use leaf off bare ground conditions. So one of the ways this computer software lets you manipulate view shed models is to consider whether there are leaves on or leaves off, which is really cool. And so she said where the view seemed pretty local, she did the visibility with vegetation. So that makes sense. That's why you can stand at 35 and essentially just see the corner, right? I mean, for many reasons, right? The elevation and where it is and what it actually is and what you can see from there, right? So that's why those look so different, right? Because if you go to Brickyard, you can actually see the lake. And if you stand at 35 on the corner of Ridge and East Shore Drive, you can't see the lake, right? I mean, these are, hopefully that helps.
So the purple that we're looking at there is not places that you can view the lake from.
No, that's places you
You
can,
can actually see standing right there at the number.
that's correct.
You can see a little bit of the old pit stop area and down maybe as far as part of the. I still disagree with some over on 36, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is the white-
Basically on 35, you can see a good section of Johnny Farkas's old farm down
Right.
on Blake Road.
Yeah.
And you can see various spots around the center of town. And she's not
but
making.
why
any
is
sense. You can
why
see
is the
anything.
white in between the pink?
Because it's,
Five
because
down,
it's,
you got some pink. Pardon?
it's clear ground that's covered by brush that you can't necessarily see the surface of the ground.
Something's in the way.
With no leaves on it?
Pretty much.
I got you.
Does this make a little more sense now? It's like almost like a 5 foot, 6 foot tall person and what they can see from that point, basically. Yep. And you can change the height settings, and that's why I thought Lynn's question was interesting relative to the height. And I think now we're starting to get into, I wanted to kind of give like a broad conceptual understanding of like, okay, these are some of the points we've already identified, right? Like the Rogues Harbor 35 point East Shore Drive Ridge Road is significant because it has, a cultural element, right? It has a building that's on the historic registry, right? So that plays into the inventory. But there are other, the point of this particular exercise is try to come to an understanding together of the points at which it would make the most sense to apply this overlay district to along the entire length of the overlay district. I'm sorry, the scenic byway.
Okay, and then what is the overlay district? Is this a ban on all construction? Some construction?
We're not there yet. That's the question about use and how significant the restrictions would be, right? The overlay district is really just saying like, okay, here's where we want to really think about geographic extent where we want this to apply. Now, of course, if the board wants to go that direction and start getting into more specific questions, I do have a little bit of materials prepared that we can look at to kind of spark discussion if you'd like. That kind of are heading where you're talking about, which is about uses and form and disposition of buildings. So we can start to talk about that if that sounds good.
Okay, I do have another comment, if everybody would be patient with me for just a minute. The whole idea of the scenic byway is to preserve or point out areas where people can see some of the visual wonders, so to speak, that we have. The problem is you're dealing with sites that are seen. How long does it take a car to go around that curve at point 36? It takes about 25 seconds at 45 miles an hour. And people aren't going to be, it doesn't make any difference what building is on the south side of the road because people on the road aren't going to be able to see that. Now, if you were to buy land from the church and from the school and put an overlook off Brickyard Hill Road, then you might have an argument. But you got to remember that scenic byways are good if people have a chance to stop and look at them. But if you expect them to take a look at them when they're driving through, somebody's going to be dead.
Well put.
So on the list that she gave us, the last, one of the last downloads, that was one of the things that was mentioned by several people on that list was you need scenic byway pull-offs at the scenic spots in order to be able to appreciate it, along with some amenities, places to go to the bathroom, get gas or get a snack. I think one of them said somewhere between Ithaca and Seneca Falls or Ithaca and Geneva or Ithaca and Aurora or something. But so I don't think
there are a lot of them mentioned on the west side of the lake. You're right.
Well, this was for the, I think for the east side of the lake was what those comments were for.
Then put the gas station in South Lansing, Jerry. I mean, cars can go 40 miles without filling up now. It's not like you're pushing a Model T down the damn road.
But there used to be a few gas stations, for instance, on the actual scenic byway, and you didn't have to know the area well enough to jump off it in order to go find gas if you came through Ithaca, for instance, and didn't decide to stop down there or waited until you got outside of town. Of course, you can wait till you get to Union Springs. I think there's a gas station.
Well, there's one in King Ferry now too.
Is there one in King Ferry?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very best gas you'll ever buy. It's 5-gallon gas, $10 gas, you know, get the hell out of Dodge.
Jerry, Doug was trying to make a point earlier and he didn't get the floor. Doug, do you want to?
No, I'm just saying, what are we gonna do? I mean, I don't disagree with this, and I know it's really not my place. I'm an observer.
No, we're interested in your opinion.
But the thought is a lot of that property that's colored pink on the map is all on Cargill or the gravel pit that we can see the lake from. Well, obviously you can see the lake really well from there. It's a beautiful spot. But so how are we acquiring that? How are we pulling up, are we requiring all of a sudden they can't develop anymore? I mean, that doesn't, it's private land, I think, so what do we do?
I don't think anybody is suggesting that you can't develop on the lands that are pink. And I don't think we'd have the right to be able to say that. But the pink is just what's viewed from a specific spot, not what views the lake.
But on the other hand, if we like, I don't know, just throwing it out there, if we had a pull off over above the church as, you know, to look at the view shed, and then somebody builds something below the church as a great big structure, and there goes your view shed. Right?
Well, it'd have to be pretty big, but I don't disagree with you, but it would have to be pretty darn big because that's a lot of fall between
Right.
Brickyard Road and Route 34.
True,
But
true.
up along the other hill, I think that there's some really good views of the lake out along Ridge Road.
Agreed. There's a really good one from Brickyard, but once you head down the hill, you don't see much of it anymore.
No, I mean across the
No,
valley,
I know, across the creek.
up by where Beckwith's old farm was, and where we used to have our shop up in there in the flat fields.
Yep.
You're going to have a spot there with the Nature Conservancy. Maybe there should be something worked out there with a pull off and maybe a place in to have a spot. I mean, the kids have been raising hell down there for years. Maybe, you know, have a public spot where people could see the lake and enjoy a little of that with the Conservancy.
Where's
Could
that?
you say more about that? I'm not familiar with that parcel.
Well, I think it's Beckwith, where they came in and the second Andy Zepp was presenting, you know,
What are they calling that? Cuba Cliff?
Zem, what was the name?
Cuba Cliff, isn't it?
Plain,
Tim's.
down over the hill.
That's right.
Many a can of beer has been drunk down there.
I will point out there is a pull off on Brickyard Road right off of 34, and people use it all the time.
Yeah, they call it the parking lot of United Methodist Church.
No, there's one
I
between
know,
30.
I'm just
Wait a
kidding.
minute.
No, there's one between the parking lot and 34. There's a little
I know that.
area that's gravelled that,
Yep.
Oh, that used to be the road wide there.
Yep.
Where
And
you sold
if
stuff.
you were going north, you could.
Fruit stand.
that
It was a
road,
fruit
but they
stand.
did away with
Fruit
it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And is that
is
just
there a sign
informal?
there that says it's a scenic pull off?
No,
I don't believe so.
nothing.
So I would think that it would need to be signed if it was
I don't even,
something.
who owns it?
That was originally a DOT spot where they stockpiled materials when they were rebuilding the road. And more recently, it's been used by people that have pulled in and set up a little vegetable stand and things like that.
The guy that sells the Pennsylvania peaches down there.
Yeah.
That's right. So basically, if you're looking for an owner, I think it may belong to the DOT, which would be serendipitous because they're the only ones that you'd have to talk to get to develop it as a turnoff.
Well, it used to be a Y there, right? That you could turn, and then there was a triangle in the middle. I don't think any of that was bigger than the roadway right away. So I would think that that's all DOT area or state area. And
I
so
agree.
I think you could, if there's actually a view from there that's worth looking at, I think that you could certainly talk to the state about putting a pull off there and signage, but.
May I point out that this is exactly the kind of discussion that having this map of view sheds allows us to have, of saying, here are some areas where something should be preserved, or we should try to figure out what could go in here, who we could talk to, so that you don't end up blocking it.
If you got over on the other hill, you might be able to combine a pull off viewership with a bus stop, for instance.
Whoa.
Have a
The
spot.
problem is, on the other hill, Jerry, most of that land is privately owned.
But if you stayed within the roadway right away, you might be able to make a deal with somebody. It'd be worth talking to somebody about at least, even if it's privately owned.
Well, I agree with Deb. The maps
Oh,
do give us a good talking point. Listen, I've worked with Karen for a long time on the EMC. I've got a lot of respect for her work. She knows what she's talking about. it would have been very, very useful for us to have her commentary when we were looking at those maps. A lot of this may have been explained. I cheated because I've been in construction so long and dealing with people. I've looked at maps like this before. So I kind of cheated, but I think it would have been very, very useful for us to have the commentary that CJ was talking about. And a lot of the questions that we've been asking, I think would have been cleared up.
Larry, we didn't realize you
Sorry
were
about that.
on viewshed maps.
You know, I detest the word, but the point is, Jerry, you can't be in construction for 56 years and live in a cave. I've seen these before.
Yeah, it was simply you're detesting the word that I was commenting on.
I know you were.
I want to point out that if you look at the keys of the maps, each one tells you how she's defined it. So for example, 36 says it's a bare ground resolution. So there's no trees taken into account on this one. And if you look at, what is it? This would be 57 is a bare ground. You know, they tell you which one she did a modified. It's in that legend.
I don't know. I was seeing stuff that said visible and non-visible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just above it, it says how she defined it. So if you look at map 35, it says leaf on condition.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
assuming that there's trees fully leafed out, and that's what you can see with the trees fully leafed out. So each one tells you how she has made the parameters.
You can also provide so the CAC is still working on the scenic inventory, but they've written essentially a little blurb along with some photos for each spot. So hopefully we'll be having that soon and can put this all online. And just to confirm, so I don't know how well this is going to work, but I have remote desktop running here. This is the area which everyone was discussing about the Y. This area for the peaches.
Yeah,
Yep.
Oh, was that a yes?
that
Yes.
was a yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
That's actually part of DOT right of way there. So it looks like DOT already owns that. So the black lines indicate the DOT right of way here. So it would appear that they already own it. So that's
Nicely done.
fairly straightforward conversation there. So thanks for pointing that out.
Joe, just as an FYI, I can't blow my PDF on this screen up enough so that I can really see a lot of those comments. So, you know, mea culpa for that. No excuses. That's why I said, you know, CJ was talking about the additional comments. We're not necessarily reading them on here because of how big. I can only take that PDF so big.
Mhm. Yeah, it'd be nice to have
I
printed
was
out copies to use.
I was confused by the visible, not visible thing, thinking that that's where you could see the lake from as part of the view. And
Yeah,
just that was the view from that point, whether it was lake or dirt or grass or what, or leaves on a tree.
I've heard comments today about wanting pull-off areas where the Peach Place is, further up by the Finger Lakes Land Trust, maybe another one further south. How do we, I mean, are we in consensus? Is that something the planning board would like to see is pull-off areas for views?
I think our responsibility would only be to make sure that there was effective zoning in place that would allow it and land use, but we're not responsible, or it's not our duty to try to make that happen. We're just responsible to make sure it could happen if somebody decides they want to do that. Is that true?
Can we make a recommendation to the town?
Or who do we make a recommendation?
Two of the
Who we like
places
to
we've been,
meet?
So we could certainly contact DOT region here and just have a conversation about them. The one that is most obvious is by Brickyard, because it looks like they already own the land. DOT already owns it, but if there are other locations you think might be helpful to point out for turnoffs, that would be helpful too.
The DOT had a scenic turnoff about halfway down Estes Hill. And when they widened Route 34, that took about half of it. So they just pulled the guardrails in and let the trees grow up, and there's no longer a spot there.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with. You know, it might have, could have been at one time, but right now, I think it would be very difficult to do anything with. But the one at Brickyard, maybe we've got an opportunity there.
Yeah. I mean, if you go on the other side of the lake, just past the tavern on the right-hand side, there's a pull off with a view up there. You guys know what I mean?
Cecil's?
Cecil's?
Yeah,
No, on the other side of the lake.
Just past
Oh, that-
Glenwood Pines.
Yeah.
Glenwood Pines,
Pines is a good spot.
Yeah, just bust the Glenwood Pines on the right. There's a pull off area. Is that something that the board would like to see, say, on intersection of Brickyard in 34?
I think that would be great. I think you'll find that the DOT has a limitation in size, and they might have to do something to make it big enough to work. But I think that would be a great idea.
I think that's an ideal spot because there's sustainability, not to use that word too much, but you got the school and the church that probably aren't gonna, you know, be too wild as to change that panoramic view.
Correct.
But that area right there has got a natural circle driveway kind where you can enter and exit it without too much trouble if they wanted to set it up that way.
Yeah, but I point out it's really not very big when you consider, you know, 5 or 6 cars, maybe 4 cars, and then still have room to enter and exit.
Yep, I agree.
Really?
That's probably all the use it would ever get.
Are we really looking at something that intense over time?
Nope. I'd be surprised if it was more than a car or two at a time.
But it would be a little or no cost item for the town.
Right, and it would be beautiful, I'm sure, from there in the fall.
And sure, a lot better than trying to look at it when you're driving around the curve.
It's a great
CJ,
spot to watch the sunset.
Is other municipalities around the lake looking at this as well? Because if we're trying to do this view shed around Cuba Lake, then there really has to be like Larry was saying about the turnoff on Esty Hill. Were you saying that or what? And things like that. So that is, you know, points of stop, like the report said.
There's another one on Route 89 north of Taganic. There's a pull off that's been there for years and it's still maintained by the state.
Is that the one that has the picture of the power plant?
Haven't stopped there in a long time. I don't know for sure.
It had a picture of the power plant panel and everything that happened, and was a nice little story of the power plant. They could show the Bitcoin factory.
To answer your question about what anyone else is doing, we could certainly work with Town of Ulysses and Town of, I guess it would be Town of Ithaca, across the lake to have some reciprocal views that that you think should be preserved, or you know, construction there and limited. That's a pretty significant land use challenge, but if anyone's up for it, it's us.
They've already made the same comments to us, much to our potential detriment, about our having development in places that they can see, and how dare we?
All right, back to that 100-foot and 200-foot overlay. What I guess I don't understand we're not talking about limiting construction, right? Or we're just saying that construction should be compatible.
Well, and that's a good question, right? So we've talked a little bit about the geographic extent to which you'd want to see the zoning applied. And the reason why we kind of showed both of these things was to show you kind of the buffer of what kind of is a short distance. So 200 feet is just the foreground, right? It's just, a couple hundred feet off the edge. It's not grabbing a whole lot. But then you can really see through the view shed piece, kind of the totality of what you can see from each of those points. So the question is, not necessarily saying no to construction. It's more some questions related to, let's just
Maybe
go
not
to
have
that.
any 5-story buildings, in other words.
Well, and that's kind of the point, what you're saying in terms of, you know, I I hear, we want something that looks nice. Not necessarily seeing or hearing a lot about uses. There are some concern about uses, but mostly I'm hearing about, attractive buildings, limiting commercial uses, but providing some services. I'm hearing some things about conserving the working landscape, and think I'm ultimately seeing this as kind of two areas. I think we kind of have a choice here, which is starting to become apparent, which is, maybe South Lansing-ish. This is obviously this is not this area. This is just kind of examples of what they mean by these ideas, which is, here's kind of South Lansing, here's, the Brickyard kind of area around the school. And then from there, do you really want to see much development from, say, the bridge up? Versus this kind of concept is like, well, wherever commercial lands in this area, okay, great, because it's on, it's on a state highway. We don't mind if there's commercial all the way up 34, let's say, from, the town line at the village to, all the way up to the school. I don't know that I'm hearing that to be true. And in fact, that's kind of why I'm provoking these questions of like,
Well,
do you
well,
see them as like a,
I'm sorry. I think the concern, like Doug was saying, is the definition of limiting commercial use.
Mhm.
What does limit mean? And then Doug makes a good point, is that where do you want the commercial? You want it along the thoroughfares, correct?
well, in some instances, yes, but how about the question of how about the entire thoroughfare? What if within the next 6 months you got building permits every 300 feet all the way to the county line?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
We'd have to worry a lot less about our taxes going up.
Outstanding.
Well, and
Listen,
I thought
I'm not sure that'd be a great idea.
There are a couple of things. First of all, I'm not going to either lionize or demonize commercial, but let's just take a couple of basic facts. Commercial development creates jobs and creates wealth. Commercial development takes fewer municipal services per dollar out than it pays, not like residential. And some of the commercial, if it's done properly, can help draw. If you're using the right things, they can draw tourists. They can draw commerce rather than chase it away like some of the bad commercial that we've all seen done in both in our town and parts of the state. So let's not demonize it. Let's see if we can make it work for us.
So you're saying we need more wedding chapels?
No.
well, and
But
I thought
in spite of what people say, one of the things that's going to be coming in the future, people are going to be looking to areas like ours that are pleasant to be in, and they're saying, let's hold our corporate meeting there. Let's do a sales pitch to our clients there that they're doing in other places now for the same reason, because they're pleasant places to go. They're accessible either through superhighways or airports. We've got all that stuff. And this stuff doesn't have to sit heavy on the ground, but it can be utilized nearly year round and not just for damn weddings.
And also, it does not stress the school system.
That's
and
correct.
Other heavy needs, and the tourism thing is good. It's just, I'd like to much look at a balance before we tie everything up because it looks nice. Having something bermed and properly buffered, you can do almost anything. And this lady that presented, or this list, is talking about hotels and restrooms and gas stations, all these things that seem to be anathema in some circles. So I think that, I think there's a place for everything, but I don't quite know how you lay down and say this can't be here and that can't be there. I guess you could say attractive buildings as long as they didn't have to be log cabins.
Well, we're looking for ways to optimize the tourism aspect of the scenic byway. So we can come up with ideas of amenities or destination properties that would optimize the views. Even I guess that the lady we had on last week was talking about, our last meeting, views of farmland, just bucolic views that are long distance. Some of that, I think, if you had the right kind of commercial entities in the right spots, you would optimize those views to somebody's profit and hopefully to the town's profit, because you'd be putting in places that are destination properties for tourism.
One of the problems that we have in the town of Lansing is that there seems to be an attitude among a fairly significant percentage of the people in town that anything commercial or anything having to do with business is bad. And to me, that's the job of the town board, to educate people to say, listen, we can have the lifestyle that you want here, but it's got to be paid for. And we can pay for it by taking more tax money from people who don't have that money to pay taxes, or we can encourage businesses to come in that are compatible with our desires, that can create jobs and that can pay those taxes. But that's not up to the planning board to do. That's a selling job that is more within the purview of the town board.
Right.
We can make all the suggestions we want.
Our responsibility is to make sure that those types of entities have a place in town, in the right place, and that's what we do through land use ordinance or through zoning.
Or acceptable site plan.
Or
The site plan that comes back for, Larry's been working for. We really haven't gotten a good answer on that.
But I think the question before the board right now is what type of businesses do we find compatible, and how can we write laws that will bring in the ones we want and not bring in the ones that people don't want? And I think that's what we're looking for, is that balance. And this overlay would help us shape this road to look the way we want it to, and to not turn into something that we don't want. And that's the choice we have right now, because it's still somewhat of a blank slate. And so now's the time to sit down and say, how do we want this to develop? What kind of businesses do we want to encourage? And what kind of rules do we place on it that will encourage the type of businesses we want and not encourage the type of businesses we don't want?
I
Well,
would
this is
posit
not
the proper
just-
site plan would make a huge difference and expand the kinds of businesses that we could in fact have.
Well, I don't feel like this is just in the scenic byway. This is in all of Lansing.
Yes, it's a good point.
hence
Well,
two Dollar
exactly.
Generals.
Well, that's why we're going to be redoing all of the zoning over time. We just have to do it one piece at a time.
Can I make a quick comment? Lansing is very desirable for people to move into the community and live in the community. And there are many factors of that. One, we have a good school, but we also have convenience to support services. So if you want to go out to dinner, you're in North Lansing, you can run up to, even though it's not in the county, you can run up to Tree Levin. You can go to Linda's Diner, which will be open soon. Or you're in the Central Park, you can go to Rogues Harbor, Crossroads, or down to Chow. Or if you want your child to go to the dentist, we have these support services. You compare that to somebody living in Danby or Caroline, they want to go out to dinner, they've got a truck all the way to Ithaca. So those support services, those restaurants in retail in Lansing Market are all beneficial to people in the community. So I think we need to keep that in mind, that they are good things for the people here.
Agreed.
I think one of the most wonderful examples right now is at the Southern Cuga Bank. That building is absolutely gorgeous. Having some overlay district that would direct the production or the building features that go in there of any business that comes in, that would be really nice.
What do you like about it?
Well, I love timber frame.
Okay.
And it's got a real distinctive architectural look. It's not just a ploppy dop thing. I mean, Andy's buildings are very serviceable, but they're a little boring there. But it's got some strength and it's pretty.
Except for scale, it looks like a residential property. The scale is huge. It would be more in place if it were residential down on East Lake, but it has that vibe, that residential look. I can understand completely what Deb is saying.
Is it the peaked roof too?
I've long been I've been an advocate of that for commercial properties for forever.
Yeah.
You have to break up all those straight lines, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to end up with the Denver airport either to do it. You can stay fairly simple.
So I'm hearing that the Cuba Lake National Bank, the scale, and what about you're not seeing the cladding yet, but did you like the material samples that came through?
Yeah.
Want to know?
Other than the scale, it looks like a residential structure. It's very attractive.
But Larry, once they get landscaping in and parking in and everything else, it may blend into the neighborhood. So let's give it a chance and see how it.
I'm not complaining. I think it looks better than most of the neighborhood anyway.
Yeah.
Doug, would you say a few words about the building? I know you have some familiarity. Just curious about your experience.
Well, the lower 4 feet of it, 3.5 to 4 feet of it's going to be cultured stone.
Ooh.
And the rest will just be clapboard siding. I think it's smart siding. And then obviously the front with the timber frame and the 2-story look is all glass on that whole end, the west end, and then also the southwest and south and northwest ends. So, and then that goes back into it's pretty neat building.
When you say smart siding, do you mean hardy plank?
Yep. I think it's actually, if George were not on vacation, he'd probably be here and he could say, but I don't know that it's hardy plank. I think it's just the LP smart side,
Because the hardy plank has issues. I've been inspecting it for nearly 30 years and it's got some real weak spots.
Like what?
Well, unless you use their proprietary sealant and their specifications to put on the cuts.
Yep.
They don't back it with a guarantee, and there's no way you can back prime and finish prime, that's 2 coats of sealant on all the cuts on a siding job and do it for $600 a square.
No, be about 1,200.
See? Yeah, that's the point. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that gets left behind when people use hardy plank.
It's not hardy. I know that. So that's about all I had with that. I mean, it's going to be a sharp building.
I think it's gonna look great.
I don't know. I'm not sure the color, the final color of the siding, but I know that the stone, I think, is going to be a brown and gray, the cultured stone, and that'll be like a siding product too. Actually, is what it is. It's basically stone on a piece of wood with a nail fin on top and a ridge on the bottom, so it stacks on itself. Pretty. It's similar to what's next door at Andy's building there.
Is it like veneer? Is that what they call it?
More or less, but it's attached with nails. It's more of a siding application as opposed to a masonry one.
Okay.
And the other point is that the bank is centrally located. So again, it's a support service and it services majority of Lansing. You don't have to fight the traffic in the village of Lansing or
Right.
downtown Ithaca to use the banking services. You just, you run down the road and there it is 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later. So, again, support services is good for the community, in my opinion.
So the other thing about that project is that was mostly handled, as far as we're concerned, through site plan. And it wasn't handled through zoning or land use ordinance. In other words, it's in a commercial zone. And then we applied site plan rules and whatever tools that we have available to it. Now, they were coming up with some interesting stuff to begin with, but we were able to make sure that it was going to fit in with the surrounding community.
Well, I don't believe there's a zoning for all. I mean, can we all agree at that? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think site plan is where a lot of this
So we're accomplishing a lot of different
stuff has to be dealt with.
But you're accomplishing a lot through site plan, case by case, although it takes a minute, but to case by case, where you have one size doesn't fit all. It never does.
The problem is,
We
with
see that
site-
on the lake shore all the time.
with site plan, we're accomplishing a lot by asking for things that we may or may not have the right to ask for. And so far, we've been lucky in having people agree to do them. What
Yeah.
we'd like to do with site plan is make sure we have the right to ask for these things.
As long as it doesn't become a taking, I don't disagree.
Well, I think I'm more in agreement with you than you would believe.
Well, and I feel
think
like
there's
we're
anybody
not,
on this-
You can go too far. Quite frankly, I don't think we should be picking colors out personally.
I agree.
But, and obviously that's not necessarily the case. But I mean, why are we picking colors of things? That's ridiculous.
To
Why
the
are we?
best of my knowledge, we have never required a particular color on site plan except
You
except-
requested and got.
except when it was offered, and that was by Cargill.
Yep, that's what I meant. Yep. And they did receive that and then did go with it. So.
well, and it's also to
For
be
that had to do with
consistent.
its view, the fact that it's such a view across.
Keep
the lake.
trying, Sandy.
Yep, go ahead, Sandy.
A little frustrating getting on Zoom sometimes. We have to be consistent too. I feel like we
Yeah.
had one person that are welcomed, like 5-foot trees. Then we had another person that their 5-foot trees are this big. I mean, so there's no consistency, and that really bothers me when one developer, gives you twigs and the other developer gives you, a forest. I think we
Maybe
need
you
some
ought to come up with a better definition of 5-foot tree. Is it going to grow to a 5-foot tree or going to start as a 5-foot?
Exactly, but we don't have that. So when,
Yeah.
when the developers say, well, I planted you trees, you didn't say you wanted them.
We have a perfect right to ask for trees at 4 inches DBH, whatever. We have every right to do that.
Yeah, but there's not any, like, I feel like a lot of times we don't have any meat. We can ask for it, but they don't have to give it to us. Of course, we don't have to approve their site plan, but
That's correct. If we
There
wanted
you
to
go.
offer something, we can. And the board did not do too much about it on a couple of local sites I know about. But we have every right to ask for a real buffer that doesn't disappear, or a real berm that doesn't disappear. And we have a right to ask for trees that, you know, we can be more explicit about how we ask for them, but we can ask. And they can't put them out of business, but we can certainly look hard at it.
And I think in being explicit about these things, if we have a coherent plan of saying that in these particular regions, we can get commercial development if we have clear criteria. Oh yeah, this, we really want you to come in. This is what we would be looking for here.
Buffering
So-
against other commercial development.
Huh?
Are you gonna buffer against other commercial development?
What do you mean?
Well, if you got a gas station here and then a CBD shop next to it, are we gonna put trees between it or pot plants or something? I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, if we can get
I mean,
clear on that.
are you gonna do that? I mean, are you gonna require, you know, or can a commercial zone flow commercially? Or share a parking lot or something of that nature?
Well, it's a little like the B1, but if we look at the idea of reverse frontages,
Yeah,
I think we can look at commercial and have it interact with the roadway and other things to be more attractive.
Sure.
yeah, commercial doesn't have to be, you know, like, I don't know, when I think commercial, I don't think of like a big industrial site. I think, yeah, you can have an industrial site, but you can also make it look pretty.
yeah.
You know, we're not necessarily looking to buffer between businesses. What we're looking to do is buffer between businesses and residential areas, and particularly in multi-use areas. One of the things we're saying is we can have the businesses right next to each other, but let's take the parking and put it behind them with the reverse frontages. So your access and your parking is from the rear, and then you can have some sort of uniformity from the front that's not going to have a negative effect on the neighborhood. That's all we're asking for. And they can make it whatever flippin' color they want. But we're kind of sick and tired of seeing people come in and build stores like the Dollar General on Route 34 South.
Not any color.
No, especially flipping colors.
Well-
That was gonna come up.
Especially what colors?
Flipping. Larry said they can have any flipping color, but I don't know.
I don't know. I kind of like orange and chartreuse myself.
Oh,
Janella's
Yeah,
got a
Howard
beautiful
Johnson's?
house on the corner. I can bring you pictures. There's a couple downtown that are colorful too.
yeah.
Anybody ever been to Key West?
Oh,
Yeah, but that's consistent color.
there you go.
But it does
The-
bring
the
up a
point-
good
the
question about
point is-
vernacular, right? What is the vernacular of Lansing?
The point is, we can do a lot with site plan review if it's made clear to the clients, the developers, that we're acting within our rights. So all we're asking as a planning board is to be given certain tools in site plan review. So far, a lot of the things we've asked for, we've been really lucky, and they've provided.
So how
And I
do we
think
change the luck to, that's the way it is? I mean, how do we change that so that we're not really lucky that the developer said yes, but hey, developer, this is what you gotta have.
We have to be consistent in what we ask for, number one, but we have to have the right to ask for those things, and that right has to be given to us in local law.
Right, that's what I was.
So that's why that's why I've been trying to make those requests to the town board.
Well, we haven't had a heck of a lot of help from Guy. And I think there has to be kind of a sit down and decide, where are we? able to do these things? Or can we not do these things? Are we restricted to lighting and noise and buffers and drainage, or can we go further?
I love Guy, but if you're looking for a positive statement that we can or can't do something, you'll be looking for it for a long time.
Ah,
But
We've got to take the
give-
initiative.
We need to give the town board then a list of requests or some wording that they can work with. We can't just sit here and say, we need some tools. We need to be specific about the tools that we need and make sure that that's communicated to the town board so that they can draft a law.
Well,
I
Larry
think-
already wrote that letter.
I think what CJ is trying to get is an idea of what kind of businesses and what kind of buildings and what kind of look you'd like to see in a commercial district along 34. And she can put together the language that would make that mandated. But I think she's sitting back and listening to what this board likes, hearing what kind of materials. Why did you like the bank? What did you like about the bank? What kind of projects don't you like? Why don't you like them? So that you can get an idea of what it is you want to have, right? And then she can write it up so that we can say, this is what we want. And when a developer looks at our zoning code, they know what we're looking for. And if they aren't bringing something similar to that, they aren't going to bother. And the folks who want to be in a world that looks like that will say, Lansing's the place for us.
Well, one of the things that we're looking for is architecture compatible with other architecture in the area. And what we want to shy away from, even if there is other similar architecture in the area, is the square block with a flat roof.
Or even a
How
rectangular
much more
block.
specific can I be?
Where the only appropriate places in town for flat roofs.
As far as I'm
Behind a
concerned,
buffer. Big one.
as far as I'm concerned, from a structural standpoint, there isn't a place in town that's appropriate for a flat roof.
Wait,
I'm a structural guy too, and flat roofs in our climate are an anathema. They have to be built twice as heavy in order to carry the snow loading. Okay? Pitched roofs are more architecturally.
You got Cornell Industrial Park. They have flat roofs on those buildings.
And I don't like them either.
Wow.
So Larry,
What have you got against Fan Creek?
Larry, you want the Wild West where the flat roof is behind and you have this nice.
No, I don't want the flat roof. Is anybody listening to what I'm saying? Flat roofs are structurally inferior to pitched roofs.
I'm just teasing you, Larry. I got the flat roof.
And yes, I built
All
houses.
your rooftop units on a pitched roof, that's for sure.
And I've built houses with spancrete roofs. Okay, and the
Hotels with spancrete roofs.
the only reason I like them better is they're 3/4 underground.
I think all of us would agree that the architectural compatibility is probably the what's the word I want, the most important point.
The primary.
We would like to have more control over. Is that true, board members?
Yes.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
landscaping.
I would lean towards landscaping, not telling them what they have to build.
The second thing would be access. We would like to encourage reverse frontages and putting parking lots behind buildings rather than right out on the road. Okay, that's pretty specific. And there's not a thing about that wouldn't suit the other areas that we're talking about. If you were to go up between Milliken Station Road and Algerine Road and put a hotel up there, access should go around to the back of the hotel and the parking should be in the back. Landscaping in the front of the facade of the hotel should be in the front. It makes it more attractive for everybody.
What hotel is this?
I use that as an example.
Oh, okay. I was like,
If you go up on
He's
Route
scared the crap out of
34B,
CJ.
Doesn't exist.
Hotel.
if you go up on
It's like,
Route
what did I miss?
if you go up on Route 34B and you put a resort or a meeting venue or a hotel on any stretch of that land in there, on the lakeside or even on the other side, first of all, the architecture should be compatible with the rest of the architecture in the area. And you can do it. They build them every day. Secondly, the access, the parking lot should be behind the building, not out in the front.
when you
other
say
words,
compatible, can you go into more detail about what you mean?
If
by
all the,
compatible?
if all the houses and barns along the road have a pitched roof or a gambrel roof, then the commercial property that's put in there would be proper with a pitched or a gambrel roof.
Number of height also, Larry?
That's where we're a little bit archaic. On the uphill side, or even the downhill, this goes by the area. If you're building a building in an area where there actually is something to look at behind the building, then maybe there's room for a vertical limit. The original reason that everything in the town of Lansing was limited to 35-foot high is because our fire equipment couldn't handle it at that time. Now our fire equipment can. So there's no reason for us to have that 35-foot limitation. Okay?
If you have a 75-foot wide building, how much of your height limitation is going to get used up with a peaked roof on a 75-foot wide building?
Probably 12%.
How much?
And Jerry, weren't you listening when I said that we should do something different with the height limitations?
Yes, but I'm just saying that suddenly you're building in a lot of extra space there that's unusable for any reason whatsoever. And
oh, well, that's the cost of doing business.
Peaked roofs on a 40-foot wide building is different than a peaked roof on a 75-foot building.
Depends on which way the peak is running. And by
Well,
the
if
way,
your building's 200 feet long and 75 feet wide, which way are you going to run it?
all you got to do is look at some of them, Jerry. They do it all the time. You know that.
You can do it. I'm just saying you waste a lot of space and you run into a height requirement of 35 feet and suddenly you've got 25 feet of roof peak.
Yeah, and you got a 10-foot.
Pushing the height different.
Okay, guys, here's where I'm going to depart from you. If they want the business in this area, there's no reason that they don't want to make it so it's looking good. And if that means that 12% of the height is going to be taken up in the roof, oh well. There are some things where you have the aesthetics of the community.
What's the tallest building in the town?
Probably
Rogues Harbor.
Rogues Harbor. Yeah.
probably the skip tower down at the salt mine.
Okay, well, sure, all right. Structure, sorry, I meant building or something habitable.
Probably Rogues Harbor.
How much
No,
taller could you
The
go?
airport terminal is taller than Rogues Harbor.
That's fair. In the area of the South Lansing node there, how much larger could a building be there, and do you think still fit in with the scale relative to Rogues Harbor and the other buildings that are there? Like, could you go, I think somebody said 75 feet. Like, could you go that tall, or would you want to see that modeled?
If the rest of the scale of this is just me, but if the rest of the scale of the building was, I hate to use the word compatible, but if it was in scale, if the width and length were in scale with the height, you could probably easily go a full story taller than the Rogues Harbor.
So if the massing made sense on the corner, you could do it. Is what I'm hearing. Maybe, not from.
Maybe.
Well, you're hearing that from me. Everybody has their own opinion.
Yeah,
I
I
think it would have to
understand what
drop
you're
back a little bit from the road. Would have to be pretty deep, but I do believe you could have a very effective view of the lake and a very attractive fourth floor or whatever.
I agree with Lynn. It would have to come back further from the road. You're dealing with the same kind of formulas they dealt with down in Ithaca when they had to step back the building when it went above 4 stories. The
Right.
same thing that they have in New York City for access.
Right, but they just step back the upper floors. So you might say the third and fourth floor have to be stepped back from the road, not the whole building.
right. I agree.
That might not be unattractive if it's done right.
Be a nice patio.
Yeah. A great place to have a wine bar. If we didn't have snow 10 months out of the year.
I snow tonight.
I just don't see us having this kind of pressure personally. If we really would have enough to have all these places, take a heck of a job for the Chamber of Commerce to get people here.
And folks, we don't have.
We're setting parameters, Lynn. We're not saying this is going to happen, but I was asked questions that asked that I set parameters. So I set parameters that work for me.
But Lynn, you make a point. We don't have municipal sewer. So there is going to be limitations in development at this point in time and in the near future. If and when we do get sewer, then it may be a whole different ball game, so to speak, a whole different look and revisions. But at this point in time, without that sewer, that does limit what someone will or can do with a property.
Well, would you go for somebody that came in, a software company that wanted to go out on Algerine Road and put in, a major 20,000, 40,000 square foot facility and build an engineered septic system and had berms and parking lots, and what would people do? It'd be a planned development area.
Well, the consideration for me would, what would the impact be on the surrounding community? I think if it were properly buffered and if the traffic were handled properly, it would work. However, any kind of development like that is going to have a great deal of resistance from the same people that have been resisting other things in the area. So there's always going to be people, there's always going to be a certain amount of our clientele, our constituents being the residents of the town. They're going to be against any kind of development like that. So is the town board willing to deal with that? Is the planning board willing to deal with that? Because we're where the rubber meets the road. To me, if something like that is put in, as you said, as a PDA, and if it's properly buffered, you can put those places down and they can't be seen. If they're properly buffered, they'll know that they're there.
And I think if that Dollar General store looked like the bank and was pushed up the road, I think you would have gotten a lot less people complaining about it too.
Yeah, I think, and I also think that when people see what that Dollar General store looks like, now that we've had a shot at it, there should be fewer complaints. You got to remember, Joe, that when you say Dollar General, the thing that goes in everybody's mind is the place down next to the car shop.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. And I understand you could have pushed them further if we had more design guidelines that said, this is what you have to build and this is what you can't. And when you say, we don't want
Absolutely
these big square
correct.
boxes, we need to say, you can't build these big square boxes in the town, or certainly on certain areas, so that we don't get them.
Why did
So
we?
how do we write a law that tells us that we can tell somebody who owns a piece of property and wants to put one on their property that they can't? At the moment, as long as they're within the zoning, they have a right to be able to put to build the building that they want to build with some input from us. How do we,
Where did we get that roof
law
though?
that's specific enough that's going to tell them that they can't put anything? Just say no
Well,
with a flat roof.
here's the point. For a long time, Lynn Davidson has been in full favor of architectural standards, and I've been dead set against them. They do have their place, and architectural standards that can support the community, I think, can be justified. You're not telling people how they can build their houses, but you're telling people that come in with a commercial property that, hey, here's, you know, you can't look out of place from the rest of the community.
And you're not telling them what business can come in.
No, you're telling, as long as we have whatever the rules are in place before somebody decides to come in and buys the property. In other words, I don't think that we can go with the zoning laws the way that we have them and then start telling people that they can't build the building that they want to after they've already purchased the property.
Right.
But we did get a roof we liked up in North Lansing. Why was that?
Well, because they, you know, be perfectly frank, it wasn't because of my erudite presentation. It was because they wanted the damn store there and they were smart enough to figure out that was what they had to do to get it.
And what happened the
To get
first
it in
time Dollar General came in and we said we would like something that looks like windows and we would like some trees. And it was like an act of providence from getting the Ice Queen to say yes. But the last time, everything was different.
Well, I think that we, I don't know, I had more confidence to say, no, I don't like that, or, you know, and I think we got burnt once, so the second time around, we're like, no, we don't like this.
And because we did some research to find out that what she said is we don't build them that way was a bold-faced, sorry-assed lie.
Yes. And in fact, they'll build them with a produce section.
Mm.
Yeah, I hear they use human manure in Tennessee to raise their produce.
Stop it.
Just joining the rest of the world.
Stop it.
Night soil.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure that I've necessarily gotten all the answers to the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway, but I don't know that that's necessarily even maybe what we need to do at this very moment. So what I'm hearing is I'm hearing some destination properties for tourism. I'm hearing site plan rules that Larry sent, which I still have that list. I'm hearing architectural standards / design guidelines.
To the extent that they would enable us to do
Commercial.
what we tried to do with,
Commercial.
yeah.
Okay.
That would enable us to do what we were very lucky with on the Salt Point Brewery, and what we've been pretty lucky with Andy on because his buildings aren't totally ugly.
Yeah.
And what we finally made some headway with on the
Bank.
Dollar General in North Lansing. But if we had some of those things in writing, it would make our work an awful lot easier, and I think it would make everybody a lot more happy with the results.
And it would.
I don't care if it makes it easy for us. I was born to live hard.
Well, and the businesses would know the expectations coming in.
If those things are very clearly written down, we're gonna get people want to come in. What they don't like is uncertainty. What they don't like is somebody that doesn't know what they're asking for. If they say, okay, here's what these people are going to ask us for, let's go. So we have to have things, the fewer questions they have, the more likely they are to come here. And the more likely we are to end up with something that is really good for the town. Come on, guys, cut me a break here. I hate talking like this.
So I'm curious as to how we, I mean, I guess CJ can come up with some wording, but does it go in a land use ordinance? Does it go in site plan rules and regs, or does it go into comprehensive plan? Where does this information go that people are going to be able to see it before they get their hopes all up that they're going to come in with a flat roof structure in this town?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the site plan stuff would go into a local law. Am I right, Joe?
This is all part of our zoning and, you know, it's a question of, you know, how far afield you want to do it. Do you want it to be a town-wide rule or do you want it to be a specific zoning rule for a specific section of town?
No, it wants to be town-wide. Our
So
site plan,
definitely it should be town-wide.
our site plan standards should be town-wide.
Right,
We
but
got
specific,
same thing for everybody.
right,
have
but
to be
specific
consistent.
requirements can be different in different parts of the town.
Yes, but we have to have the right to ask for those requirements.
Yes,
Going into housing on that?
No,
I think we've just been talking about commercial right now. I don't think we've been talking about residential.
Oh, I heard.
yes,
town.
residential doesn't require site plan review.
Yeah,
Well,
it
it's the
should.
industrial section of town.
yes.
Sections, we have two, don't we?
What I've been
Yes,
talking
3.
about is industrial and commercial.
Okay.
Well, is there a business zone too?
There's a
That would be
B,
commercial.
Okay.
So
The only residential I'm aware of that we've ever done site plan on are multiple dwellings. And there's a pretty fine line, you know, there's a pretty blurred line for them between residential and commercial.
I think it might be worth considering site plan for some of the steep slope areas along the lake too, because we can get in a lot of trouble putting houses in the wrong place there.
Yeah, we can, but I think,
For a 239 review on that? This county goes through that.
and stormwater.
yeah, we got to be careful on that, Joe, I think, because again, it's the residential thing, and we do have other things like Doug and Lynn just pointed out that cover part of that. I'd be happy to start by just being able to tell people the same thing on commercial and industrial development as far as our site plan is concerned. I agree with you that the steep slopes are an issue, but I think there are other ways to handle that. We can make, for instance, additions to the building code. We can make our building code more restrictive than the uniform residential code, and we can make it more restrictive for those steep slopes.
So I've got a list here, and Larry, I think once upon a time you did send me your site plan list, and I really thought it was archived in my email. I'm going to do some checking around, but if you have it handy and can forward it,
Please do.
no worries
I
if
don't know
not.
offhand, but I'll try to dig it up.
It was I was in between emails when I first started with the town, which is
If you can
very
dig
strange.
it up,
But
it'd be nice if we send it around to everybody so that we can either look at it or add to it.
well, that's what I'm thinking. There could be an
Well,
opportunity here.
Actually, that's what I did the first time I sent it around.
Yeah,
I think I'll have to go onto my old email program because I think that was before we got the town email.
I do believe that one thing I found talking to the Planning Federation, that site plan is kind of inclusive to the things that are already there. And how much we can play with extra in site plan, I think we ought to cover. We can certainly, write a local law. I'm just saying that it may not be able to be expanded.
Well, as far as I live my life by the rule that it's always better to beg forgiveness than to ask for permission.
It's fine by me.
So.
You can
Let
shoot
me
it
see if I can dig it up and send it
but I'm
around.
gonna have the orange suit.
I think I'm hearing a little bit that there's this interest in design guidelines and possibly architectural standards. I'm hearing, I think, some interest in design review, I think to an extent, perhaps from this board as part of site plan review for commercial buildings. I'm hearing concerns about scale, massing, peaked roofs on commercial buildings. I'm hearing
Reverse
about
frontage.
requiring, yes, as part of circulation access parking as a standard title sheet that should be submitted as part of a plan set. I'm hearing a landscaping plan submitted as part of a plan set.
Which we've asked for all along.
Yeah, so it sounds like these things need to be brought into both site plan review, design review, and then also into the application process. And we are getting ready to revamp those. So it sounds like there could be an opportunity to address these site planning issues as a preliminary step in addition to, because it may actually solve some of the issues related to a proposed Cuba Lake Byway if we're able to get a better handle perhaps on some of the form and site planning issues. Now, I'm not saying that is or is not the case. I defer to the board, but it sounds like this conversation has gone towards, town-wide design guidelines and or some very specific and targeted architectural standards. Is that what I'm hearing?
It might not be quite that strict. It might be a little more lenient, but I think you're headed in the right direction.
I second Larry.
Okay. Great.
I'm old. Can we go to bed?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Each of
Thanks
us
for taking the
separately.
time. Thanks. you guys have been here for so long, and it's really helpful to me to understand what you want so that we can put this into practice.
I mean, I think in major subdivision, and we haven't done one forever, but we had all kinds of where were existing trees, where, what were new trees, how big the trees were going to be in.
What they should preserve.
Yeah,
Well,
we did.
And it seems it might be still there. I mean, we haven't done a major subdivision in how long, but it strikes me when we went into Whispering Pines and the beginnings of others, Larry has a better memory than I do. Some of that stuff seems familiar.
Yeah, we did. We had pretty broad caveat there. We could do a lot under subdivision.
And also related to that, I think we talked about it once before about setting aside so many feet or acres of green space based on the number of lots. In other words, if you're designing 10 lots, then there's got to be at least X square footage of green space and or monies given back to the town to buy green space somewhere else. I think that's not a bad plan. How it's created and the limits, can be discussed, but the idea that there is space set aside in a development.
I think that's New York state law. You have to allow a certain amount of that. It's like 8.5% or something like that.
We did that on Trip Hammer by Micheline's. We'll let Larry set the rules on trails. It's something he's real favorite of. But, that kind of thing can be addressed to some degree, not easily.
Anybody got any other comments they want to make? I think Larry got mad and left.
Yeah. Well, before we leave, there's one thing that Lynn raised that I think we should really think about is a scenic overlook on the Cuba Cliffs. Having some chance for people driving along to, I can't remember where their entrance was. Was it going to be off Fiddler's Green? But review that.
I'm not sure that there's much of a view right from there, is there?
Well, people could get out of their little silly cars and walk.
That's all going to be part of the Finger Lakes Land Trust now, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, I think they're
Yeah,
gonna put an entrance in there.
it could be something that could be advertised as part of the Cuba Lake Byway. Because there's a lot of scenery, even though the lake views may be hard to get to.
Weren't they coming right off of 34B into that?
I don't, were they? Yeah.
Yeah, they had a driveway off of there into the trust.
Yeah.
I mean, and same thing, we don't want them to miss Ludlowville. I mean, that's.
know.
that's
It's
the article
lovely.
money.
It used to be.
Yeah.
Back.
When they reconfigure the school there. Turn that into condos.
That was the plan. I think they're looking for your money, Deb.
Ah, well,
Deep
they've
pockets,
got it.
deep pockets there, Doug. You gotta.
Yeah.
There isn't enough money in the world to make that structure viable.
Yeah, last time I snuck in there, it was pretty bad.
Even bats.
What's
Um,
the old
Al-
high school?
Time
Are
to
we
go.
talking about the
Time
old
to
high
go.
school?
Time to go.
No, I think they're talking about the Ludlowville School.
The
Oh,
Ludlow
the
Middle
Ludlowville
School.
Yep.
The one you went to.
No,
I just wanna
I
mention-
went to what's the middle school now.
Doug, it's up behind where the old church was at the
Where
top
the
of the
old-
hill next to the brick.
I know where it
Yep.
is.
Right.
I know where it is.
Yeah, we used to go to church down there, the Methodist church.
Yeah.
It was the summertime digs, and up here at Asbury was the wintertime digs.
But there was a split amongst the Methodists and they got to fighting and there were two different Methodists. That's where
Okay,
the.
enough.
Well, we all came together and built the one in the middle. It's there now.
Okay, we're getting to silly time.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else have anything to add? Do we, CJ?
DJ.
I just have
where we wanna
one-
Go with this?
One more thing on behalf of Al, who had asked me recently about meeting in person. So that's my final
Ah.
question.
Oh,
I was just curious if anyone was interested or there's still reservations.
Only at Salt Point and outdoors with a beer.
I second that one.
We just have to
Um,
post where we're holding the meeting, but
I have no problem with the group here. However, throwing the meetings open to the broad public, I think is still, for me, a little bit of a dicey situation. I mean, to me, these meetings have been much more productive this way, and we have been able to field questions from the public without the degree of conflict and animosity that we've experienced, or we had experienced in the year of 2019. So I kind of,
Trained, Larry, we have been trained to do a better job.
Oh,
you can't be trained to resist a freaking ambush, okay? And that's what that was. And I don't care if any of them are listening right now, I'll say that to their face. I'm too old to be politically correct.
Moving
Well,
right
no.
along.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Are
second.
you done, CJ?
all set.
Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alright.
This was
Bye.
great.
Have a good 2
Bye.
weeks, everyone.
See, you guys didn't know you needed a resident curmudgeon, did you?
We always
Yeah.
knew we had one.
Best curmudgeon ever.
That's right.